When the first instance of a worldwide plant virus was discovered 3 years ago, it began to decimate the majority of our ecosystems. Consuming food contaminated with the virus results in serious autoimmune illnesses, and the loss of plant life has reduced atmospheric oxygen content to 10%, increasing the frequency of natural disasters worldwide. Many now believe the planet is doomed since the top scientific facilities in the world have not been able to find a cure. Developed by Dr. Stephen, Project Gemini revolves around 2 ancient extraterrestrial relics that paleontologists are certain are 4 billion years old, predating all life on Earth. This is the only hope that remains. The sphere and the engine are constructed of extremely durable materials that Stephen's team has replicated. With the help of this engine, they were able to construct a spacecraft that could fly without a crew and locate a planet that would be suited for terraforming. The sphere, which is used to develop life, functions because of several directives that the team has now successfully deciphered. This is evidence that extraterrestrial life originated on Earth. In order to establish Earth 2.0 with the sphere in the solar system TESS, which is several hundred light years away, a crew made up of both medics and military pilots will be traveling. Amy, Stephen's wife, is against him embarking on this assignment. She nevertheless travels to the base on the day of the launch in an attempt to stop Stephen from departing. But she is late and has to watch as the ship departs the planet. An odd fissure that emerges on the alien sphere after the ship departs the atmosphere suggests they might not be alone. The spacecraft creates a warping gateway that lets them travel throughout the cosmos by using the alien engine technology. But as soon as they cross over, the systems signal a problem. They aren't at TESS. Instead, they are in an unknown location. Stephen accuses Peter, the engineer, of entering the coordinates incorrectly, and is therefore temporarily relieved of his responsibilities. A short while later, as Stephen lies in bed, he can't stop thinking about Amy, and the first time, he used the sphere to see a strange humanoid figure that vanished in an instant. Following that, Stephen requests that the team attempt to establish the jump trajectory in order to determine their location. However, due to a malfunction in all of their data, as though they had transitioned between third and fourth dimensions, this is not feasible to accomplish. In the meantime, Peter sneaks out of his bunker and grabs a surveillance camera so he may examine the sphere by himself. The computer then reports that the repair airlock has been opened, and that an unknown object is in the vicinity. To the surprise of all, they discover a frozen Peter floating outside. Dr. Leona doesn't buy that. She's known Peter for 8 years, and he wasn't the kind of guy who Dr. David believes Peter stopped things because he couldn't live with his mistake. She is told to take over Peter's responsibilities going forward after Stephen chastises her for sobbing over the man who has ruined humanity. Subsequently, David discloses that he too considered ending things after his daughter passed away, but decided he could still be of use. He feels worthless now that the goal is complete, but Stephen assures him they will find a way to help. The ship encounters a planet composed of volcanic rock at that same moment. They wouldn't require breathing masks because it lacks oxygen, and the external environment isn't hostile. Captain Ryan interrupts Stephen as he is about to land, pointing out that they haven't done a thorough inspection of the planet yet, and that by doing so, Stephen is irresponsibly endangering the crew's safety. Stephen believes this is the ideal way to continue their plan, but Stephen doesn't give a damn, reminding everyone that he is the one making the decisions in this situation. Officer Richard will remain on the mothership while the squad descends aboard a shuttle. The shuttle must use the braking engines to slow their descent as they approach the planet, since they are about to confront a very violent storm. It's also their sole hope of survival, but it will also deplete all of their fuel and keep them from returning. In an attempt to make a connection between the 2 most significant things in his life, Stephen dreams of the moment he gave Amy a bracelet crafted from a specific piece of the old sphere. As the shuttle touches down, the crew passes out. The crew wakes up a little while later and starts working right away. Although there isn't much damage to the shuttle, they're stuck here because of limited fuel. Since they arrived to stay for 4 years, Stephen doesn't see any issues with this. Moreover, he is certain that they can utilize one of the large caverns as a dome to throw the sphere into. A strange substance falls off the walls in the shuttle's secret passageways. Richard discovers this substance in the mothership along with the lost camera. When he examines the other chambers, the group successfully activates the sphere by taking it to the closest cave after everyone is suitably outfitted. They then head back to the shuttle to start gathering data, but Ryan stops them in their tracks to declare martial law has been declared in the station. He provides certain information that Richard provided him while the physicians were at work in order to justify his choice. In order to prevent being accused of making mistakes later, Peter recorded a video of himself while he examined the sphere. He discovers something moving in the shadows when he opens the engine door. It leaps out at him, out of the blue, killing him before flinging him off the ship. Richard says he has reviewed all the film, and that the alien has been with them since they left Earth, since it moved within the sphere like the Trojan horse. Even if the camera is unable to record the shape of this monster, it is no longer on the mothership. It has descended to the planet with the shuttle, which is likely what caused the failure during the jump, because the alien interferes with the electromagnetic field, which explains the poor recording. Richard is able to track it. David abruptly ends the conversation to point out that the sphere is operating on a different program than what they uploaded, indicating that something strange is going on with the system. Ryan forbids Steven from returning to the sphere, warning him that he will no longer be allowed to lead, and accuses him of harboring secrets. Ryan explains that Richard also discovered footage of Steven seeing that strange figure back on Earth months before. This means that although Steven knew there could be a threat, he chose not to alert anyone, which makes him responsible for Peter's death. Taken aback by this charge, Steven storms out the room, remembering the many hours he and David spent on this project. Because he was still grieving, Steven wasn't sure David should have gone with them, but David persuaded him that he was okay and that he wanted to improve the planet so that other children wouldn't suffer the same fate as his daughter. Shortly after, Steven meets David and requests that they slip out through the airlock to see how the sphere is doing. David is reluctant to defy Ryan, but Steven persuades him to do so by bringing up his daughter and the planet's destiny. They discover as soon as they enter the cave that someone changed the settings, causing the sphere to develop an alien life form more quickly than it did earthly life. David begs Steven to go and talk to everyone, but Steven starts working on the sphere settings right once. David fires a warning shot at Steven to try to convince him to move as he sees on their radar that the alien is approaching. Before things become ugly, Steven answers by drawing his own weapon, but they discover the alien has already entered the cave. Both guys start to flee as soon as Steven takes a portion of the sphere to carry with him. They can tell the creature is getting closer by its shadows and sounds. When they emerge from the cave, they are finally able to see it clearly, but they escape the creature's attack by returning to the shuttle and closing the airlock. David chastises Steven for endangering their lives, but Steven responds that the sphere is more significant and that he won't think twice about firing the next time. Ryan then arrives to reprimand Steven as well, and Ryan punches Steven when he tells Ryan that they would need to use force to stop him. The crew is alerted by the computer that the integrity of the module has been violated. When Leona goes to investigate the problem outside her room, she discovers a lot of goo in the hallway but is then abruptly drawn back into another space. Frank is the one to tell her that the extraterrestrial has entered the lander through a hole in the bottom deck. A couple moves extremely cautiously to hide in the lab, where breathing is becoming increasingly difficult. The lights abruptly go out, and something odd is audible behind the plant units. Leona is pushed out of the room by Frank, who interprets this as an alien invasion. As she flees down the hallway, she hears Frank scream as the creature murders him. Ryan yells at Steven for taking the alien back with him when Leona meets with the other members of the team in the control room and informs them of what transpired. They are cut off from Richard and unable to see the rest of the ship due to the beast that broke through the hull and damaged the power and cameras. Since they can't find the creature, their only option is to go to the backup generator and reconnect everything, which will be exceedingly tough to accomplish. Steven offers to go since it's his fault. Steven carefully navigates to the generator while brandishing his weapon, and successfully restores the communication system. Now that the team can locate the alien, they can alert Steven to its proximity. However, as soon as Steven tries to flee, he starts to hear those sounds. Fortunately, Ryan acts quickly and uses a metal rope to haul him back into the control room. The group then decides how to smoke the alien out of the ship. As Steven waits outside to set up a game of bait, Leona opens the lab door and the airlocks, running to hide in another room just in time to see the alien emerge. Richard tries to start the engine to burn out the thing, but the alien interferes with the signal, so he can't. The creature starts moving through the airlock swiftly. Richard gets again access to the engine as the alien emerges as Steven flees for his life, and Leona rushes to his aid. The thing is struck by the fire, but it is not killed, and it tries to reach Steven, who is being carried inside by David. As Steven and Leona flee back inside, just as they close the door, the alien's tentacle stings David's arm, trapping the creature's limb within. Ryan closes the airlocks, allowing the others to seal the opening while the beast makes its way back into the cave. When the squad discovers Frank's body, a short while later, Leona takes her own life due to her sadness, but Steven can't help but think of Amy. She had attempted to persuade him to stay by stating that she was developing a vaccine and, more crucially, that she was expecting a child. But this was unable to keep Steven from leaving because preserving Earth was more essential than his own well-being. Steven delivers the tentacle so that David can examine it while David goes to the lab to have his wound stitched. When he learns that the creature is a biorobot constructed of the same material as the sphere, it becomes clear that the sphere has always been intent on creating these creatures. David receives word from Stephen that he has been infected by the tentacle with a bacteria that has a strong defense mechanism, and that the secret to creating a vaccine to save Earth is now in his blood. Stephen cuts the tentacle, causing the lights to go out, and flashing back to the image he saw on Earth. This indicates that the alien is a transponder, and that this is how his race colonizes other planets. Ryan locks Stephen up in the lab, and tells him he's under arrest for endangering everyone's lives. Stephen concludes they must kill the alien and reset the sphere. Ryan observes that Stephen views life as disposable, and David concurs, claiming that Stephen has little regard for people and is merely interested in playing the hero. Stephen is reminded of their previous altercation, when Amy called him a savior complex, and then threw away her bracelet. As Stephen keeps working in the lab, he develops a theory that Richard supports when he looks over the travel logs. Rather than jumping across space, they leapt through time. The clone sphere they carried is the same one that paleontologists discover later in time, and they are still on Earth, but 4 billion years before life existed. Disregarding the fact that David's wound is becoming worse, Stephen becomes thrilled to discover that the sphere fragment he previously took is the same one he will use to create Amy's bracelet in the future. He then writes a message on it explaining to Amy how to activate the sphere they left behind. Amy arrives at Stephen's lab in the present while attempting to process the news that the team did not complete their objective. Unexpectedly, Stephen receives alarming news from Richard. In order to prevent complaints, Ryan has shut off his radio and is getting ready to detonate explosives to blow up the sphere. When Stephen discovers Ryan holding the bombs, he starts arguing that they can come up with a better plan than this. Stephen asks Richard to reopen the airlock so he may escape. A shot that unexpectedly kills Ryan breaks up their conversation. It's David, who escaped through the airlock and became insane from the infection, believing the alien had selected him to help fix things since humans are a malfunction from the sphere. In an attempt to divert David, Stephen tosses Lena's Rubik's Cube against the wall. As a result, David is shot by Stephen and flees the scene hurt. Stephen then sets off the device and steps outside to fire a flare in an attempt to attract the alien's notice. Stephen commands it to follow him to the control room, where he locks it up. However, as he flees down the hallway, David shoots him and forces him to hide. Stephen is then approached by the alien, who smashes through the door, but he quickly shoots it off of him. Stephen is being pursued by the alien as he flees, and when he returns to the control room, he runs into David, who attempts to kill him. Stephen has the opportunity to escape the shuttle just before the bomb bursts, and dispatches the beast, but his attempts are thwarted when the alien appears and kills him first. Richard wakes Stephen after he faints briefly outside while attempting to get in touch with someone who is still alive. Richard tries to come help him, but Stephen advises him to remain back and head back to the cave to use the sphere because the storm is too intense. Amy uses the bracelet to activate the sphere in the present when she eventually discovers the message and finds her bracelet again. At that point, the husband and wife reunite in a fusion of the past and present. Stephen quickly shares the vaccine's formula before declaring his love as soon as they can no longer communicate. Amy sobs upon realizing she is now a widow after Stephen perishes in the cave from a shortage of air. Many months later, Amy is raising a healthy child because to the vaccination, which is currently improving conditions on Earth.